Hi everyone, it's Nat here. Hope you're all doing well. I am on for my project for the month of June for Helmar. So Helmar create a multitude of different adhesives. And they've got a wonderful product that I've been using now for a good 4 or 5 years. So I'm very proud to be on their design team because I do love using their products. So for today's tutorial, I will be using their Craft and Hobby PVA glue, their 450 quick dry adhesive and the Crystal Coat gloss varnish. So I did have in mind to make a wall plaque that was ocean themed this month and to try using some of my oxide sprays to colour it. And then I got a bit nervy about that, so I decided on something completely different and I got all the bits and pieces ready for that. And then I went to a second-hand shop the other week and I found these dangles that had these, I don't know if they're porcelain or some sort of air-dried clay or something, little seed decorations, which are absolutely beautiful. And I also found some little plaques. And I thought, oh, I'll definitely have to use them sometime for my ocean-themed wall hangings. But I still was going to go with my other project. And then I was looking through Instagram and I stumbled along some, they look like wall plaques that one of the Prima marketing girls had done, who's a brand ambassador for Prima. And she is called Unicat on Instagram. So I'll link her down below because hers were amazing. And I looked at them and I thought, you know what, I really want to give it a go. So that's what we're going to have a go with today. So I'm going to try and incorporate these porcelain or whatever embellishments with some of the seashells and stones that I have here. I'm going to try using my oxide sprays, which I'm not very experienced with, but I do like having a go. And Helmar's awesome glues to try and stick it all down with, so we'll see how this turns out. So I have my 2 plaques here, and I've got myself a paintbrush, and I've got some tissue paper there that I got in a parcel that was delivered to me. I'm just wrinkling it up a bit more by scrunching it up in my hands, just to get some texture. I've never done this before. But yeah, I love the effect that it does give. So I have my Craft and Hobby PVA glue and I'm putting some into my little palette there and just putting a little bit of water in as well. It'll just spread a bit easier that way. So I want to cover the base of my plaques with the PVA and then I will put my tissue paper down on top of that. Have to remind myself that I don't want to smooth it all out. I do want the wrinkles for the texture, so I just sort of press it down gently. And then I PVA over the top of it to seal it nicely. Makes it a lot more sturdy as well. Now that wets the tissue and it does start breaking at the edges, which is good. So I use that and just go around the edge with the brush to help me pull the edges off. You can see there's some bits where the tissue paper's broken, but that doesn't matter because we will be covering it more. And I put that to the side to dry and do the other one exactly the same. Decided to do 2 plaques. I think it will look nice on the wall with the 2 of them. I was going to do 3, but I thought 2's enough. So again, just laying my tissue paper on top. Great way to reuse the tissue paper. I've got a whole drawer full of it from all the parcels that I get that are wrapped in tissue paper. Again, just using the brush to wet those edges as I pull them away. So once they're dry, I think I left them overnight, so they're nice and dry. I got out my shell and stone collection and started arranging some bits and pieces onto both of my plaques. I do have a dangle there that I got at the op shop, and I will be using a few of those on these as well. I've had my shell collection for ages and I don't use it for much, so it was great to be able to get it out and use it in something that I will display in my house. So I find an arrangement for both my plaques, and once I'm happy with that, I get all of the bits that I want to put on my plaques, and I'm just removing the little cup hooks from the dangles. And I've got my gesso there, it's just white gesso, and I want to use that to do a coat over all of my embellishment pieces here, all my shells and the little dangle pieces. So I put some of that into a palette, and I've just got this little paintbrush and I'm just painting it on. I've got a bit of water there as well, and I just wet my paintbrush a little bit. It just helps me grab the gesso and smooth it out a bit easier. I'm just doing the one coat over all of these pieces for now. So I'll paint them all, and then after I've done that, of course, I let them dry. I love the way these porcelain pieces look already, but I don't think they're going to fit in as well with what I'm doing if I don't gesso and colour them the same. So I did all the pieces and they've been left to dry, so now it's time to stick them down to the plaque. So I'm putting a good blob of my 450 quick dry adhesive on them, and then I just press them down, and every few minutes I sort of go and just press them down a bit more to make sure that they stick really well. Now it's quite cold here and they seem to still be moving quite a while afterwards, and I was a bit worried about that, but I think it was the cold air here and that, and I left them overnight to dry and didn't fiddle too much, and they dried really well and they stuck fine, so it worked really good. So just slowly go around adding a piece and then going back and pressing down just very gently on the pieces that I've put down before, just to make sure they're all sticking. I've got these bits there, I don't know if they're fossilised shells or what, but they're really cool. They look like sponge a bit. Then I found the dolphin and I thought he'd go really nice up in one of the top corners. So I did let both my plaques dry overnight with the glue as well. So then the next day I grabbed some more gesso and I go over all of the shells and embellishments as well as the background of the plaque. You let that dry really well, and then if you think it needs another coat, then give it another coat, because it all helps when you want to put your colour on. It protects the tissue paper and that. I also make a point of going around the edges as well at this point. So the next job is to start getting some colour on. So I've got my old paper Distress Oxide spray there. And I just spray a bit of water after I've sprayed the oxide and wriggle it around so it moves around on my plaque. And then I just sponge off or dab off some of the excess. thought that'd be a nice colour just to do a bit of a base coat with. So I grab my heat gun out and make sure I dry these off quite well, which I think helped a lot. Usually I don't dry things off in between, I just leave them to dry, but I think it gets the tissue paper too wet. So then I go in with my Mermaid Lagoon. I thought that was fitting for an underwater theme. And again, spray a bit of water on to get it moving around and just tip it so that it does move, and dab off some of the excess. It's very hard to know how it's going to look once it's dry, because you put it on and I think, oh, that's a bit dark. So I sponge some bits off, but then when it dries, it's a lot lighter. So you do just have to play and then keep adding bits and wait for it to dry. But it's heaps of fun. I've got the book pages down just to grab any excess splatter. It'll colour up the book pages so I can use those in projects. So I do both the plaques with the Mermaid's Lagoon and then I dry them off, of course. Then I go in with even a bit more of the Mermaid Lagoon, because as I said, once it's dry you find that it lightens up a bit, and I want some darker bits. And then I thought I'd grab a paintbrush and see if I could move some of the ink around with the paintbrush. So I spray some of the ink by itself onto my silicone mat and use that just to highlight some bits and get some ink where I wasn't able to get it when I sprayed. And then dry all of that nicely. So it's getting a bit more colour on it bit by bit. So now I have my Twisted Citron. So it's quite a yellow green. It's quite bright, but again, it's amazing how once it dries, it goes a bit lighter and that. So I really liked using this just to add a bit of contrast. So it's just not all blue. And it was quite relaxing with just getting the paintbrush, and then I'll spray a little bit of water next to the ink. Just to water down the ink, and that way I've got a bit of control over how bright I make the colour. And I can use the water to spread it out a bit more here and there. So I spend some time doing that with the green and the blue, just to get colour in some of the areas that I think don't have enough. Now, I think it was after this process I decided not to dry with the heat gun, and there ended up, once it was dry, there were a few holes in my tissue paper, so that's where the drying seems to be really important. So now I want to use the little cup hooks that I screwed out of my dangles. So I'm measuring about 1 centimetre in from either side of the bottom of the top plaque and then the top of the bottom plaque, if that makes sense. And I use a little stick pin to create a little pilot hole, and then I screw my little cup hook in. Now, I'm not going to be using these to actually hang the pieces from each other. They are for decoration, but it's great to reuse those pieces and some of the chain that I've gotten off of old broken necklaces. I thought it would just add something a bit different for embellishment. So it ends up with the 4 cup hooks. I had 4 dangles, so I've reused the 4 cup hooks for this. I don't know if they're cup hooks really, they're loops. I don't know what they're called. I'll just say cup hooks, that works. So you can see there that I've got the 2 on the bottom of the top one and then 2 on the top of the bottom one, so I can chain them together. So now I'm going back in with my gesso just to cover up the few bits where I got some holes. Also, when I screwed my little hooks in, it did crack some of the wood. I screwed them in a bit too far, I think, but I wanted them in there nicely. And because they're not going to be used to hang it doesn't really matter, but I'm sort of patching up the holes with the gesso so they're not so noticeable. And yeah, just a few areas where the tissue paper sort of broke. Now I've just put a little bit more of the PVA out on some of my plastic packaging. And I am using a paintbrush to apply that to some areas on the edges of my plaques. And then I'm just putting a little piece of silver leaf, it is, on top of that. And I let it dry just for a little bit, and then I grab another paintbrush just to brush all the excess off. It looks a little solid for my liking, so I'll go in with my finger and rough it up a bit more on that as well. I want it nice and patchy. I don't want it a solid whack of silver, really. I thought because I'm adding the silver chains that the silver leaf would look nice as well. I'm doing that while I let my gesso dry from my patching up efforts. Tell you what, using gold leaf and silver leaf and that is as bad as using glitter. I have still got like these little bits of glittery silver all over my desk, even after wiping it down about 3 or 4 times. So now I'm spraying a bit more of my blue onto some packaging with some water so that I can just add some colour to where I added the gesso and patched up. Again, it looks so dark and that, but when it dries, it does go lighter and fit in a bit more. Just adds, again, a bit more contrast to the colours that I've got. And I remember to dry that off straight away so I don't end up with more holes. You learn from your mistakes. I learn a lot every time I make anything. I make a lot of mistakes and I learn. So going in with a bit of green again now. You can see that the green I did before, it looked so bright when I first put it on, but now you can hardly see it on this. I thought, well, at this stage, I'll add a bit more. And then I decided to just go around the edges that I put the gesso on just with a bit of blue. I think I got a bit of green mixed in there too, but it doesn't matter. Just thought it would look a bit neater finishing it off like that. So now I have my little chain scraps and I am just pulling apart or opening up one of the links there. I'll hook that around my little cup hook thingy and then close the link off. It's a bit fiddly. I'm getting better at doing this sort of thing. I'm not the best at the really little details. And then I can join that to the top loop as well. But I do have one for the other side that I want to join. I counted all the links as well to make sure they were even. And would you believe I put it all together and then realised one side had 3 more links? Don't ask me. So I had to undo one of them and take 3 links off and do it back up again. You can see there it looks like one might have a bit more. And then that's joined my plaque together. I've got the Crystal Coat Gloss Varnish there. I used that to spray over the top of my plaques. It will seal them nicely, adds a nice glossy coating, makes it a bit easier to dust, and hopefully will protect the colours and the silver leaf and that a bit. So I did that prior to putting on my words here and my last bit of embellishment. I didn't think they needed the coating because these are plastic labels that I used. The Dymo that you can see there, it's just a cheap Dymo that I got from Amazon that I used to make my little labels there. They say Ocean Life. So I'm just cutting them down a bit so there's not so much of the blank black plastic around them. Then I have some glass gems or stones. Thought I had a bag of those bigger ones, but when I looked in my box, I could only find that one. But I was really happy to notice that I've been hoarding a couple of packs of these littler ones. All this stuff that I think I'll never use and I'm meant to be chucking out, and I'm so glad I don't. I'm so glad I hoard everything. Comes in handy. So I'm just taking the backing off of my labels there and applying some of the 450 just to make sure that it sticks well. And then the 450 again to put my little gemstones down. Works really well with these. So I grab my pick me up tool, I think it's called, just to help me hold the little stone. So I'm all finished now. This is going to be a wall hanging. It does have the chains here connecting the two plaques, although I'm not going to hang it using those. What I will probably do is use command strips, maybe the Velcro ones, which I will adhere to both of the plaques, and then I'll be able to stick it to all like that. That way it won't swing around or anything like that, and it will sit nice and firm. So the chains really are just decoration. And because I added the silver chains, I decided it might be nice just to add some silver highlights with the silver leaf. So that was a bit of fun. So the glues that I used from Helmar for this project were the Craft and Hobby PVA. I watered that down and used it to stick the tissue paper and then seal over the top of the tissue paper as well. And I also used bits of it with my paintbrush to stick my silver leaf on, and that worked really well. I also used my tried and trusty 450 quick dry adhesive that stuck down all of my embellishment pieces, the shells, these, I don't know if they're porcelain, they're some sort of clay, sea-themed embellishments, and also to stick down my little glass stones. So that has worked really well for that. I did find with the shells and that I had to leave it overnight to dry really, really well. And then when I had finished all the embellishments other than my title and my glass stones, I did give it a coat with the Crystal Coat Gloss Varnish. And then I let it dry for about 30 minutes before I stuck down the stones and the title. And that will just, it's given it a nice little gloss sheen, but it should also protect it so I can dust it a bit easier in that as well and hold down my gold leaf and everything a bit better. So that was heaps of fun. I'm definitely not an expert at the mixed media, and you saw that I did have to do some touch-ups with the gesso and the inks because I think it was my third sort of inking and that I did. I didn't dry the last lot with the heat gun, and the water sat around a bit that it actually lifted in a few spots and you can see the plaque in the background. So that's why I did go over with some more gesso and ink just to patch those bits up. So I am learning as usual as I go. Would have liked to have gotten a bit more depth of colour in that, but I really do have to practice with my inks and everything a bit more. But I really love the way they turned out. I like the touches of the green and that. So I used a Twisted Citron for the green and then Mermaid Lagoon for the blue on this. And I did do a base of, I think it was old paper. I don't know if that's sort of showing through underneath it all, but it was sort of a nice vintage greenish, creamish colour. And I repurposed the little screw hooks that were in these pieces. Now I use these porcelain pieces for the fish, the starfish and the dolphin. And I reused the little screws that were in those to use as the little screw hooks here to attach my chain with. So that was great because I only just found those in the secondhand shop the other week. So it was wonderful to be able to reuse them. And I only just found the plaques in the secondhand shop as well. So that was heaps of fun. So thank you to Helmar for the awesome glues to use. I had heaps of fun making that. You can check out Helmar's link down below if you want to have a look at their glues and if you want to purchase any. I love purchasing mine in bulk. That way it sort of offsets any postage costs and it's handy because then I'm right for glue for a whole year. So there'll also be a link to the Instagram page of the lovely lady that I saw some of her ocean themed plaques when I was planning this. And it was great because that really gave me the inspiration to have a go with it. So I hope you're all getting some crafting done too. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you again soon. Bye.